two,
One.
one. Monkey bars. Welcome back to the podcast. My name's Al.
My name is Jesse.
Okay, Thicc.
And the butter. That's me.
This is gonna be a classic review. We're gonna do one every month.
From here
that's
till
announcement.
forever.
Last month we did Boogie Nights, which is funny because we recorded that episode.
Fuck yeah.
Like
6 months ago.
I was living in Pittsburgh when we recorded that episode, which is hilarious.
I was 23, so that was before January.
Right. You got older.
I got older. I aged a year.
Although I read this cool quote where every picture that you see is a picture of you younger. I like that quote.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I like that.
That is.
But anyway, yeah, so we're gonna do another classic review, and this classic review is something that I'm very excited about. If you follow films and you follow movies, you're probably aware of this movie, and if you're not, what? But I think it's significant because this is the 50th anniversary of this film, which is absolutely crazy. 50 fucking year, 50.
Yeah,
Jeez.
50.
And I'm just happy that everybody except for Marlon Brando is still alive. Who's in Duvall and making this movie.
That's pretty crazy.
Cool.
Well, didn't Duvall? He died recently.
Oh, that's right.
He died really.
Duvall died he died last year, right? Or last year, right? He's dead, right?
He's definitely dead. I saw because Black Widow was the last thing he was in.
What? He was in Black Widow?
Is that right? Am I thinking of the wrong guy? Hold on. Okay, everyone stop. Everyone hold the phone.
We're gonna watch Black Widow. Robert Duvall is in it. Damn.
Yeah, I think Robert Duvall was in Black Widow.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, he's in The Godfather. We know that. Did you say that we're doing The Godfather yet? Were you building up to that? And we got distracted.
We're gonna do a review of Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather, based on a very popular novel of the same name.
Yeah, by Mario. Was it his name Mario? His last name's Puzo. I don't remember his first name. Mario.
Yeah,
Mario Puzo.
Absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, so is Duvall dead?
Okay, I got distracted about him looking up if he was in Black Widow. I thought he was, but that's alive.
I don't want to say somebody's dead and they're alive. He's still alive.
He is?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, who the hell was I thinking of then? Who died?
Okay. Well, there's the guy who played what's his character's name? One of the family, John.
Is the guy who plays Sonny? Is he
Sonny? No. Sonny is James Caan. James Caan's
okay.
still alive.
He's still alive. Okay. I don't know.
Anyway, all the main actors in this movie are still alive. That's my point. As well as the director, which is great.
Yeah, that's all good news.
He's still alive. He's fucking about to see. I don't know if you heard about this new project he has going called Metropolis. That's like a $200 million big budget movie directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh shit!
Put me in the line. How do I? If I was a Kickstarter, can I get money to this?
Yeah. Is that like the Metropolis, like the Fritz Lang, like a remake of that? Megalopolis.
It's an original idea. Yeah.
Ooh, damn.
He hasn't made a movie in years. He hasn't made a movie since I don't even know, a long time.
Well, that's fucking sick.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we're gonna talk about The Godfather, which is a film starring Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, James Caan, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton. Did I miss anybody? I don't know. I think I was everybody.
Yeah,
Um,
big ones
and
at least.
yeah, this is a classic movie if there ever was a classic film.
Yeah, it might
You
be one of
know,
the most classic films to exist.
this is one of those films that, if you go on like the IMDb, top 200, it's like up there. It's like always in like the top 3 or 5.
Yeah. It's a common second to Citizen Kane as the best movies of all
Yes,
time.
yeah. Um, and that argument is like fucking bullshit. Let's be honest here. That's a weird
Yeah.
argument. What's the greatest movie ever made? I don't know. What do you like, man? What's your taste? I don't know. And so that's a dumb argument. But I will say, greatest movies ever made. There should be a list.
Yeah.
Those influential. We did a whole fucking podcast on
Check out
classic
check
movies
check out our podcast. What is a
yeah,
classic?
when we trying to figure out what the hell this all means and what that means and shit. But we're not here to dwell on that. We're here to talk about the movie, and this is a movie that definitely 50 years old. It is inspired generations. Like there are so many copycats of this movie. You could argue that one of the best shows of all time, The Sopranos, is basically The Godfather. Like, it's basically the same idea of The Godfather.
Yeah.
And they actually, I've seen like 4 seasons of that show. There's actually many times in that show where they reference The Godfather and make fun of they poke fun at the idea like this is the God, like we're doing the God, like this is
Yeah.
the same shit. Which is, it's hard to shake that. This movie was so influential in so many ways. And influence is one thing, but this film is fucking awesome. It's great. It's one of those things
Yeah.
that still, because you see some, like Citizen Kane, for example, like I like Citizen Kane, like I really enjoy Citizen Kane, but it's not like when I watch it, I don't get this like magic feeling. This like I'm like, that's a really good movie, but it's not like it doesn't tickle my fancy, like The
Yeah.
Godfather does. So, and maybe that's just because of the age, and like
Right.
this, this is a 70s film, so classic in that way. 70s cinema is like one of the craziest times in cinematic history. They're wild shit came out in the
Yeah.
70s. Some of those influential movies ever made came out in the 70s. Um, and some amazing filmmakers, Brian De Palma, Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg,
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
incredible David Lynch, all these amazing guys came out in the 70s. And maybe just because of that, I'm just well versed in that era of movies, But this movie just rewatching it the other night, it's probably like the third time I've seen it. And it just I'm texting you like halfway through the movie. I was like, this movie is so good, man. It is so good. Like there are so many incredible scenes in this movie, and you know, yeah, that's how I'm gonna open it. This movie is fucking. It deserves to be a classic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a reason we're still talking about it 50 years later.
Yeah, it's shocking how that relevance is still so pertinent today. I think that is really the astounding factor of it, because in our classic podcast we talked about agreeing with sort of the list out there, the canon of what is determined to be a classic, but a lot of times classic films might not quite have that impact on us still. But The Godfather, after 50 years, like I really felt that watching it the second time was just like, this is a gut punch of a film. It's so powerful. It's so fun. It's so good. And that was something I thought that was really interesting about watching it a second time, because the first time I watched it, I don't know what like was going on. I liked it, but I didn't quite, I think I just didn't get it or something.
Were you young?
I must have
younger.
been young. I must have been like
Right.
high school or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I mean,
But
if you see this in high school, I saw this for the first time in high school. And like, I don't really I'm 15. Like you're
right,
not gonna like you're gonna be like, yeah, like I get why this is cool, but like I think, that's not what I was watching, man. When I was 15, I was like, I got three red singing boners, like that's the
right,
shit that
right,
I'm watching, and so like this is a drama. This is a family drama. It's very slow and it's very, it's the Godfather. So it's not like this explosive movie experience. So it makes sense that a high school kid would be like, eh,
yeah,
like
yeah. That's something else that
also we
what
did go to film school too. After
right at
going
that
through
point,
film school and stuff, like
yeah,
learning
whole
and
nother
watching,
level.
watching, you know, you it's film literacy. You get this whole catalog of amazing work, films under your belt, and then when you return to something like this, you have a whole different perspective and whole different lens that you're looking through it.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And when I was thinking after seeing it a couple days ago now, what I was thinking about that really shocked me and impressed me so deeply about this film is how it had that quality of sort of hitting the marks of what is determined to be a good film in terms of like a film study sort of sense, just like all the factors of it were just excellently and superbly
Mm-hmm.
made, but it also has that sucking in factor that like more like movie like ear like candy
Yeah.
films kind of feel where it's just
Oh
like you
yeah.
can't just stop watching because it's so fun,
Right.
but it's like making me enjoy eating my broccoli.
Yeah.
It's so fun to eat my broccoli because there's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much juice
yeah,
and nutrition in this,
right.
but it's
Good.
so easy to
It's good
watch.
broccoli.
Yeah, it's like good broccoli,
That's
which
so
broccoli
funny.
is
The
delicious, but
Godfather. This is some good broccoli.
uh,
No, I totally agree with you. I like that's a really. I mean, that's kind of the feeling that I had too. And like, I have formulated kind of a reason for why I think this film probably has stood the test of time. You probably
yeah,
would agree with me. Um, but like what you're saying, like, Francis Ford Coppola, um, uh, in the 70s, he maybe is. I mean, if I was like, let's put yourself in this, you're a film lover, you're like 24, and it's like 1978,
yeah,
okay? And Francis Ford Coppola is the god amongst men. This guy, the Godfather, Godfather Part 2, Apocalypse Now,
yeah,
fucking The Conversation. Like, the dude, like, was probably the best filmmaker in the 70s. I mean, like, if we're talking, like, iconic movies, but also, like, insanely good and, like,
yeah,
are insanely influential, I love Spielberg. But in the 70s, he had, like, Jaws, obviously crazy influential and Close Encounters, you know, amazing filmmaker. But, like, I mean, nothing, like, as, like, on a, like, those are, like, great candy. It's the best
yeah,
candy you've ever eaten in your life.
yeah,
Perfect
yeah,
amount of
yeah.
sugar, just perfect.
Like high quality, good ingredients, but
But,
still like taffy and candy and
this guy
sweets.
was making, like, you know, you walk into like a 5-star restaurant, you're having like a fucking like a healthy meal, like he was like a big block like the Godfather watching this too, I kept thinking about our time now and how much film has changed and how
Yeah. I was
that
thinking that
this movie
too.
was the biggest movie to come out in 1972. This was a
Yeah.
blockbuster, you know? The
Yeah.
Godfather was like a giant hit in 1972. And, that's crazy to think about now. That a film like that, this slow gangster mafia piece about a family drama, you know, was number one at the box office and broke the world. I mean, that's like,
That's
that's
such a
so
good
crazy.
it's such a good and crazy point that I really felt too, that you just really feel how much the world has changed, because
Yeah.
now I was thinking about, it's like, man, I really like The Godfather because I really like it when films are just like cinematography and good acting and like good editing, just like basic film stuff, and not like a lot of crazy zany technology or spectacle or just unbelievable things. But now movies like that get made are really more indie films, smaller films that don't have as much of a budget, and
I mean, look
it's
at the Academy
relegated.
Awards. I hate to bring this up, but the Academy Awards, I mean, all those films, you know, they're not blockbusters by any means, but no one saw them, Like there was
Yeah.
like a joke that I saw that kind of made me laugh, and I was also like, what? Was Trevor Noah, who I usually really like, and he did this like piece on the Daily Show, where he kind of joked about how the Oscars, the films that are nominated, like they're like the vegetables in movies where like people aren't seeing them, and like, you know, why don't they nominate things that people have actually seen, Which is
Yeah.
like a really strange, like it's funny, but it's also like a really strange, like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, like, people don't see it because they have to think about it, and like, now
Yeah.
that films are like so manufactured almost, like
Yeah.
they're products now. They're not back then it was like, not saying that there weren't movies that were made that were like made to profit, products, but there are fewer of them because there weren't as many movies being made. And um also like the Godfather book was a giant success. It was one of the most
Mm-hmm.
popular books of all time. And so basing a that like doesn't really happen anymore. People don't really read books anymore. Like I can't
Yeah.
remember the last time a huge book, you know, like The Hunger Games or something like that has swept
It's
the
been a
nation,
while. Yeah, it's been
or
a
Harry
while.
Potter, like
Yeah.
it's not like when the last Harry Potter book came out, there was a line of people to buy it. Like that's not like around anymore. So things are just so much different. Things that are getting made and that's why I fucking love old movies. That's why I love old cinema because they were producing these like artful cinematic pieces, but on a giant scale, and that were like trying to tell really impactful stories for mainstream audiences because those were who were going to see these movies. Now with indie movies, like it's it's almost they're made for a specific demographic, which is great. And like I love A24, but they're a demographic. It's a
Yeah.
demographic. We're in that demographic for sure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a demographic, and it's not
Yeah. It's
it's
true.
different. It's super different. Um for good or worse, I don't really know. It's just different. Um and like the whole communal aspect of like a film being like The Godfather, like being embraced by the masses is so rare. Like that's crazy that like why it's crazy when something like Get Out, which is like a real like interesting movie that was like a huge cultural phenomenon. Those are the last thing I can remember that was embraced by like the world, But anyway, that was something I kept thinking about watching this because like it's an amazing film. How how much money it made or whatever, it doesn't matter. But the fact that this was so huge, it's just so crazy to think about,
Yeah. 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 I
so
think
different.
it's interesting because I think the big factor here is really the criticism of how in the shift that we have in the modern age is sort of this mad rush to produce as much content as we possibly can that
Yeah.
people will look at just
Hmm.
for the opening weekend,
Right.
which is
That's
why
all it is.
Marvel, which
Yeah.
we are supportive of, it's
Yeah.
just a good example of this phenomenon of the formula type of movies. Again, effective,
Yeah.
cool, fun, candy, but
Yeah.
it's not doing the filmic creative
No.
exploration that The
Definitely
Godfather
not.
is. And
No.
this interesting irony about
And
it
I could not
is
hear an argument against that. I
right.
just can't. I can't do it anymore. You know,
Yeah,
like just can't.
and the interesting thing that I find is that if when you do come up with movies like The Godfather, which do push for creative exploration
Yeah,
and deep character development and a really good story, people just gravitate towards that more
dude,
so than like
absolutely.
formula stuff. Every time they
100%.
gravitate towards that.
Because like something like a big formula thing like could be popular at the time, you know, when it came out, and then it just fades away.
Mhm.
Because it's not a lasting impact.
Right,
Um,
because like a film like The Godfather, which we're both what we're the goodness that we're talking about is that you watch that and it's like every time you watch it, it's like your world changes a little bit. A part
yeah,
of you is affected by that. Like
uh-huh,
you, not just your eyes. Your eyes don't see it. It's like your whole being
yeah.
experiences the film.
I think that's a really good segue into kind of talking about what I do think is, I think what makes this film stand the test of time, and it's
Yeah.
just absolutely amazing. And I don't know why, but every time I forget or think about this movie, I always think about it as like some mob movie, like some like almost like violent or like action movie. But when you
Yeah.
really watch this, it's like a really amazing family drama.
Hmm.
And like maybe the best one of all time.
Yeah.
And and what it is it's this amazing family drama about like generational trauma and about generational uh passing of the torch. That's really what this
Duty,
movie is about.
loyalty.
Duty,
Yeah.
loyalty, all these things that are uh human emotions that literally carry over to every human,
Yeah.
criminals, everybody. Like that's the genius of this film is that these guys are criminals. It's about a crime family in New York, the Corleones, and it's but what it is like these people that are doing immoral things, you know, control like killing people, like, you know, like getting their way, doing
Yeah.
things that are, you know, paying people off to do certain things and, you know, dog shit, you know, but it's so focused. It's not even what I think I saw this interview with Francis Ford Coppola that I loved, where he talked about uh like what he thinks, you know, has made this movie, you know, stand the test of time. Is that he talks about how when he made the movie, um, first of all, he was like the last person in line to make this movie.
I
There
thought
were
that was
like
really interesting.
50 directors ahead of him to make this movie, which is like amazing and just thank the Lord have mercy that he made this movie because I don't
Yeah.
know because hearing him talk about it, he's an Italian American, and what he did was what he brought to the movie that I think a lot of filmmakers who maybe haven't had that background couldn't have brought this authenticity to this family. This family feels real. The opening,
Yeah.
dude, I couldn't even describe to you how iconic the opening 20 minutes of this movie is. It
Yeah.
is
Yes.
fucking insane how
Yeah.
iconic it is. And one of the reasons is it feels so authentic because it's, you know, because I have to explain this, but, you know, it's the opening, it's, you know, one of the Corleone's kids, the daughter, you know, Marlon Brando's daughter, Michael's sister, is getting married, and it's this wedding scene, and we get introduced to uh, Vito Corleone, Michael. We introduce the whole family, and it's you know through this wedding, and just the way that it's so authentic. It just feels like you're watching a real family,
Yeah.
and what I love too is that this movie only focuses on the family. You rarely see in a lot of like mob movies. There's always a character that's like that we follow that's like trying to like infiltrate the mob or something like that.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
don't get that. It's
That's a good
really
point.
only about their what they see and what their life is like, which
Yeah.
makes it way more interesting because we don't fucking care. We want to experience the lives of monsters. You know, we don't want to care. We don't. I don't care about the FBI who's trying to hunt them down. There's great movies that are like that too, but it's way more interesting to see the inner workings of this family.
And it's a way,
And
it's a much more intimate experience with
exactly,
them. It's
intimate
intimate.
is the word.
Yeah.
That is what makes this film so amazing. I mean, let's talk about Marlon Brando for a second.
Oh my
Marlon
God.
Brando
Oh,
is, Marlon Brando is one of the greatest actors of all time.
he's a
He's
god.
he's somebody who, uh, and what's funny is like rewatching this movie, his performance is amazing, but I can see someone thinking it's a little corny, to now because
I
you
could
have
agree.
this, and I'm gonna bring up Nicolas Cage for a second too, because I do see this uh like weird thing going on with people who like critique acting, who think that they're acting coaches or whatever people think. It's like this idea that people are like when you see a performance, you're like addicted to like realism or like off like and like I don't really get that. Like if Nicolas Cage like is performance, it's a performance. It's like he's not some of his performances. He's not going for grounded realism. If he was like acting like a real person and wild at heart, that movie would suck. That movie would be
Yeah.
boring as
Yeah.
shit. You know. But this performance by Marlon Brando is kind of like that to me. The voice, it's so like it's a performance, and there's something like um so filmic about it. It's
Yeah.
just like you're watching an actor, a performance. It's not like I think people are so obsessed with this idea of getting lost and almost like you have to believe that the person is like a real person or like act the exact way that a real person would act. But it's like
Yeah.
this is a movie. This is you're watching, it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
Marlon
Yeah.
Brando is one of the greatest actors for that reason. If you
Yeah.
watch a lot of his performances, they're like that.
I think that on this point, I've been reading The Art of the Incredibles, another fantastic movie, and they brought up an amazing
Oh
point
yeah. Oh
in
yeah.
animation where, which I think this is a big thing that I am annoyed by. Also in video games, this is another problem, I guess, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But it's this, what these guys who made The Incredibles were talking about is how when you really get animation to work, it's not about creating characters that are actually realistic. It's a lot of times it's more effective to make it
Mm-hmm.
something stylized and make them just believable in their
Exactly.
stylized manner. And that
Exactly. That's
actually
why the Lion
feels
King sucks.
it.
The
Yeah,
remake of the
yeah.
Lion King. Yeah.
But if you do that accurately, then that version actually feels more realistic than if you do something that was literally
Right.
more realistic. So that's
Yeah.
why I would say with
Right.
Vito Corleone is that character actually feels more realistic because of his decisions to
Mm-hmm.
not do things actually
Right.
realistically.
Because and also like the voice is just it's so iconic and
Yeah,
amazing
it's
at
just
this point.
cool. It's
And like
cool.
what he does with his jaw, like I mean he has so much like it's so amazing, like
Yeah.
that opening scene where he's you know, talking to. Because I love the opening where you really see his like who he is to this family. He's everything.
Yeah.
He's the Godfather. He is the Godfather to so many people's kids. And he has like so many relationships with all these people, and him a lot of people coming in and out, and him, making sure everybody's taken care of and everybody's, happy. And one
Yeah.
of my favorite characters in the movie, and one of my favorite moments is when this singer guy, this like I think he's like the husband of somebody, or like maybe he's like
Oh,
maybe
like
it's
the Fontaine character? Fontaine?
yeah. And
Yeah,
he wants
yeah.
to be a movie star. And
Yeah.
like he can't and he's like, listen, Godfather, like I can't, they won't let me audition for this role. I want to be a movie actor or whatever. And he's like, basically like, we'll take care of it. And
Yeah.
he sends this guy to put a fucking dead horse in this producer's.
Which is so
Which is
iconic.
so kind of what
Stupidly
I love
iconic.
about that is like that's so sweet, you know?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like that's what's kind of genius about this movie.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
right.
kind of amazing about films like Goodfellas as well, which I absolutely love too. Goodfellas is kind of like the um almost like postmodern version of the Godfather, and just the way that it breaks the rules of like what a mobster movie should be.
That's cool.
Um, like I, but like that's so awesome, right? Because it's like because there's part of me like, oh
Totally.
my god, you put a gun, but it's like, oh, what a nice guy, you know, like what I like the guy, like I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Vito, he's a nice
That's
guy, you
that's
know.
like that's such an excellent point, because I think that gets at the fact of the depth of each of these characters. They're not
Oh,
just like one character function of like the bad
well,
guy or the
that's
good guy.
right,
He's like they're full blown three-dimensional
yeah,
complicated psychology type of people. And
right,
the Godfather
yeah,
Don,
yeah, the dog,
he's
yeah,
the
yeah,
man who is like, he's very scary. He's a fucking mob
yes,
boss who will kill you and kill your $600,000
right,
horse.
right.
He
Cut his head
will.
off and put him in the. Okay, how shocking would have that been in 1972?
Yeah,
That
like
was
that would be
probably
pretty a
pretty
lot.
shocking.
Yeah, but the other aspect of him is that he's also, like you said, he's someone that the whole family loves a lot,
Loves,
like
right?
loves. And like as you watch the movie, that scene is so brilliant because it
Yeah,
shows the opening scene with the wedding is so brilliant because it shows how adored he is by the
right.
family,
And
but how
that's
scary he
extremely
is.
important, you know, to set up because what this movie really is about is passing the torch to Michael and
Yeah.
Michael becoming the Godfather and the God, you know, and introducing us to Michael and his relationship and how revered he is, and almost like knowing the responsibility that Michael is going to have, you know, at the end of this movie, which the last moment of this movie is insanely brilliant on a storytelling level because you understand, you know, and without going into part two, you know, it's part two is an extension of that last moment. It's him, you know, taking responsibility for, you know, he's the dog now, you know. So and what this is kind of Michael seeing and Al Pacino. Something that I also want to mention too is that Francis Ford Coppola, uh, he has an eye for casting, because think about this:
Tell me about it.
Al
Yeah.
Pacino, James Caan,
Oh,
Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton, all almost unknown actors. Like they
that's
were
so
all
crazy.
not known actors,
That's
and
so
arguably
crazy.
those are some of the most iconic actors. I mean, they're iconic as shit. I
Yeah.
mean, Al Pacino,
Yeah.
and so like that's amazing. You know, rewatching this, I'm like, holy shit. You know, like Diane Keaton is like barely in this movie. You know, like she's in the movie, but like very important role. She's the last shot of the movie, but like it's she's not in it. She's not like a major role. She's a supporting
Yeah.
character. You
Right,
know,
right.
and same with Robert Duvall. You know, Robert Duvall's incredible in this movie. And James Caan is like, oh my god, I love James Caan so much. He's such a you watch some of his early 70s films like this and Thief, which is like an amazing like early Michael Mann movie. He has this like grit and this just dirt about him. He just when I see him, he just reminds me of the 70s, just those movies of the
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
Um and like I love his performance in this movie as well. But all the performances are just out of this world good, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
just so iconic.
Yeah, it's just the characters are just so strong in this film, and I think that's one of the that's the thing that just makes this film so mind-boggling, is that usually when you have like a good movie, usually like you have like a really strong main character or a couple good characters or
Yeah.
like a pretty good plot line with like functional characters, but this movie just doesn't fuck around with anything mediocre.
Uh-uh.
All the
Oh,
character
yeah.
Every character on
Yeah.
screen is such a phenomenal personality to see on the screen.
Mhm.
It's like a pleasure to watch them. And
Yeah.
it's so enjoyable just to watch them do everything that they do in this on screen, as it might be super mundane or
Exactly.
super mobster and exciting, but they're just so capturing. They're so cinematic. You were just absorbed into their personality so deeply.
Totally. Yeah, and then like also like the the look of this movie it looks incredible. The cinematography is absolutely amazing. So classic. I saw this fucking tweet. Holy shit. I saw this. I should have sent it to you. Went viral a little bit. There's this guy, this dumbass, I'm gonna call him, posted a shot from Godfather. Uh, and it was the shot when Michael goes to the hospital to get Vito out of because people are coming for him, so he's like, gotta get him out of this room. Yeah. It's a shot where like the nurse walks in, and that shot of him standing over the bed, and like it's this tweet that was like this shot. It was like basically breaking down why it's too dark, like this and like
oh my
like
God.
and all this shit, and then like somehow related it to like Marvel movies or something. And like I was like, whoa. But so it was also scary, and I've seen a lot of this where like not just this guy, I've seen a lot of like talk about I think people don't know what cinematography is. Like, I don't think what people, because of digital things and cinematography and most movies that have $100 million budget being shot in a blue fucking room and like no actual cinematography going on, like people don't like I don't think understand like what it is,
Yeah,
and it's really
that's so
bizarre
crazy.
to see, really strange to see someone like trying to argue that the Godfather isn't that well lit of a movie. Like, whoa, dude! Like,
Yeah, that's a
that's pretty
really
scary.
interesting point. That's a really crazy point. And I think that's one of the things that makes me think about people who, when they're talking about CGI and making good visual effects, I trash CGI a lot because I don't like how it feels in movies. I think CGI is a fantastic tool that I have no qualms
it's
against.
almost too fantastic.
Yeah, honestly. But when CGI people are talking about it, they talk about how to make it, again, it's this idea of being hyper realistic, making it look like how our eyes see water. For me, in my opinion, what makes good movie, it's like I don't care if it looks like how I see water. I can look at water whenever the fuck I want. It's everywhere, dude. I don't give a shit. Make it look cool. Make it feel cool. And that's like that scene. It's just like, well, in reality, that dark spot wouldn't be that dark. Or it's like, who cares?
Even if not, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's like it's. I don't care. I mean, like it's. You have to. There's. I don't even want to talk. It's so dumb. This movie looks amazing. It's
but that's a really
beautiful shot movie.
I think that's a really good point about this idea about not kind of forgetting or not realizing what cinematography is.
Like,
that's such an interesting thought.
Like it's like this idea of like I think that's really being lost. And like that's what it's go back to like the fact that this was a huge movie at the time. People watching this like obviously super engrossed by the story, but a lot of it is Francis Ford Coppola's direction and how intimate he shot the scenes and how amazing it feels, and that's all. That's the lighting. That's the directing. That's all the cinematic elements to make it feel the way that it does.
Yeah.
And so now it's just like it's so different. I mean, like Dune is like an amazing looking movie. And like that's a good sign. That movie has amazing cinematography and people like that, so that's good. But it's just like some talk about it. It's just so bizarre. And I think it's just because like CGI and stuff is just coloring people. It's just it's different. type
Yeah,
of
and
filmmaking, I guess.
and the other thing too that's hard about what the phrase good cinematography is that you can't quantify it in terms of technical correctness.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
not that's not what we mean when we say good cinematography.
Yeah.
Because something like Blair Witch Progress, you could claim
Mhm.
has good
Yeah,
cinematography
yeah,
because
yeah,
it
yeah,
communicates the
yeah,
idea.
yeah, right.
That's not good quality film.
No,
It's
no,
not
no, yeah,
expertly executed camera movements, but the
yeah,
cinematography is good because it's
right,
effective for the story that they're trying to tell.
right.
And that's something. So, like looking at this Godfather, I think the Godfather looks amazing, but the Godfather is not as high quality as what the digital cameras have. Does that mean it's no longer
Yeah.
as good as the high quality? No, obviously not. It's a ridiculous point that
Oh
people
no.
argue. But it's a
Yeah,
crazy thing to me. It's a crazy thing. It's like,
yeah,
how can you argue that? It's obviously not true. It's not true to
no,
say that just because the quality's worse,
yeah.
it's not as good. And that's kind of like the argument that we're
Well,
in right now
I'm
with
also
modern
like,
movies all the
you're
time.
talking to also like, I'm a cinema. I love film. Like, I love movies that are shot on film. That's one of the things that I love
Yeah.
about old films. And like, what people with digital stuff, I don't even know that. People don't even know that means. I think. But when you watch something on film, it has a texture and it has a quality about it that is just I don't know. It's to me is what cinema like should be. I'm not saying that there's obviously incredible digital cinematography and amazing digital stuff out there. That's incredible that use digital cameras in the way that they should be. Like I know like Roger Deakins and Emmanuel Lubezki, the way that they use digital cameras is like
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what they take is like, oh wow, we could do crazy shit with lighting now because we could like light things in a way that is easier, but easy meaning like we don't have to put low effort. We could just do kind of crazy lighting stuff and like get
Yeah.
away with it. Back then it was like it was harder to light things. And sometimes you uh that's why you kind of get some like nighttime and like scenes that are like feel kind of more cinematic and awesome because there's like always like a really weird like moonlight like thing because they gotta expose it on on the celluloid so they need like light and so like I don't know there's just it's a different type of filmmaking like I said
Yeah.
so but I love when I see something that was just and there's also something like so awesome about uh watching something on film because like how much time and effort went into every detail because you can't on digital you can do unlimited takes. You can do 4,000 takes if you want. I just said 4,000 takes. 400,000 takes if you want to. But on film you can't.
Yeah.
On film you can only if you, on this movie, for example, Godfather, they probably had a good amount, but it was still a finite amount, to do a certain shot or scene. And there's
Yeah.
something like more magical about that to me. And that's why you get like something that's so batshit crazy, like the Road Warrior, and you start imagining like this was shot on film. They're crashing cars like this for real. There are people jumping out of like like trunks and shit. You're like, what in the heck? These guys are crazy people. You start to think about that, and it's just way more of an amazing cinematic experience to me. Rather than like they filmed it on an iPhone and they were able to do this and then they cleaned it up digitally, in post. And it's just it's not as I mean it's still amazing, but it's not as like whoa, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of my yeah, yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think that a big factor when it comes to like things shot on film is sort of that physical limitation of the medium,
yeah,
because restrictions lead to so much creativity. And I think it's really good for creative processes to have a kind of
exactly.
struggle to it because you have to kind
Yeah,
of fight stuff to really find it good. Because if it
hard
just
agree.
works, you just go with
And
mediocre
that's
stuff.
what shooting on film. It's just you automatically have the struggle because
Yeah.
it's like you have a finite amount. And like the Godfather, they were lucky. They had a big budget, but like most things, they don't have a big budget,
Yeah.
so they have to, like, the Road Warrior. It's just
Yeah.
crazy, man. It's crazy that that film came out as good as it is, and like how batshit insane it is.
Yeah.
And part of it, why it's so batshit insane is because they had to do these things. Like they had to like do these things that were like they didn't plan, and they had to think on their feet and do these crazy things. Makes us feel we're alive.
Yeah.
Rather
Yeah.
than a Marvel movie where every shot is planned to a T, and you feel that, and that, and if something isn't right, sometimes the actors aren't even in the same fucking room shooting the
Yeah.
scenes. That's how like Endgame was filmed. A lot of a lot of them, they weren't even in the same room together, and they're doing scenes together. That it's kind of miraculous that it kind of comes off that way, that they are in the same room. And sometimes it doesn't. There's some
Yeah.
scenes in No Way Home where I'm like, they're not in the same room. And so like because you feel it. And so I don't know. There's so many factors about film versus digital, but
Yeah. Yeah.
fascinating argument too.
And I
But
think, so, and kind of returning back to the Godfather, kind of branching from that conversation,
yeah,
this idea of how you sort of get through the struggle and sort of actually make a piece that can communicate with people. This sort of idea is why directors have become to be like the author of films,
yeah,
because usually it has to be the author to hold that personality, to be able to hold that together through all
hmm
the bullshit that's going on there. How do you
exactly,
get
yeah,
something?
exactly,
How do
right,
you get something to communicate what you
yeah,
want it to when you have to make the music work, the
yeah,
sound work,
right,
this actor work,
yeah,
this actor work in the right direction, that
yeah.
costume not look like shit,
And that's
get the
like
right all that
yeah,
stuff as the
yeah. No,
director.
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, if you want to hear, just watch an amazing documentary, one of the greatest documentaries, Heart of Darkness, the filmmaker, out Francis Ford Coppola making Apocalypse Now. It will make your head explode, and it might make you throw up because of the
Yeah.
amount of learn, the amount of stress, and the amount of hard work it took to make that movie. Um, and Coppola was, he put a gun to his head multiple times, almost killed himself during the making of that movie. It's crazy. These people who are to make something truly great, there has to be that person. There has to be an author. There has to be somebody who is overseeing everything. That's why we love directors. That's why we
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that's why we obsess over this shit because it's super impressive, that those people are geniuses. Francis Ford Coppola is a genius. Like
Yeah.
he was able to make this thing that feels so unique and different than a lot of films ever, to come out, since then. Like this film is violent, it's dark, it's beautiful, it's it's everything that you kind of want out of a movie like this, like a monster film. And so, yeah, he had this amazing novel to base it off of, but the way that he translated it into this super intimate piece about family a father and a son, really,
Yeah.
is is what grabbed people for 50 years because that's just people can just that's easy. I'm not a mom, but I can relate to having a dad.
Yeah.
That's the idea of
uh,
it.
yeah.
Which is brilliant. You know, you don't
Yeah.
have to be a mom to get this movie. And there's
Yeah.
some movies um, where sometimes it's kind of difficult. Like there's some period pieces, I'll call them, where if you don't know the history of
That's a
something,
good
or you
point.
don't know kind of the inner workings of the mob or
Yeah, it
something
could be
like that,
overwhelming.
if you can
Yeah.
be lost in I kind of feel that way sometimes about like um shit, Gangs of New York, which is the
Ah.
movie, which I think is one of his worst movies. But um like I feel that way about that movie because it feels kind of inclusive. I don't know a lot about the five boroughs and things like that. And it kind of it just seems so crazy to me. I'm just like, what is this? Like, understand what's happening. So you kind of have to do research to kind of understand it.
Yeah.
There's barely any exposition, but you understand I think they explain there's like three families, that control New York, and the Corleones are one, and I can't remember the names of the other two, but
Yeah, I can't
they explain
either.
that that's all you need to know, because it's really focused on the characters and what they have to do. I mean, like it's really focused on Michael. Michael is really the main character of this movie. Al Pacino is the main character of the film, and it's really his uh just what they're doing almost is kind of like put on the back burner. It's more about like the emotional idea of what Al Pacino and Michael has to do. He has to go plan and kill this guy who's, killing who's putting hits out on his people, and put
Yeah,
a hit on his
yeah.
dad, almost killed his dad, you know? And so like you're not really that I'm not really that invested in like kind of the inner workings of like the whole family and like what's going on. But I'm focused on the personal
That's
struggle that he's doing. And
that's
that's
such a
kind of
good
what this is.
point.
Like to me is what makes it like holy shit.
Yeah, 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 dude.
And if
That's
you want to
such a
go
great
into
point.
that, the family, there it's deep as shit.
Yeah.
It's super deep.
Well, and that's again, that's a factor of why this film is so genius, because
Yeah,
the logic of the plot is so accurate, and
right.
it's so right when you look into it and you dig into it. It
Hmm.
works on all of those deeper levels. But you're right, because when you first watch this film, if you don't know that history about stuff, you can kind of feel your way through it,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
think
exactly.
is
Right.
connected to what you're talking about, which is really the in films and stories and stuff, what you hear is that the big pull of the story is the transformation of a character or transformation of something.
Yeah.
Transformation is a
Yeah.
really big word. The arc, right?
Yeah.
And this film, I think, is really cool because you kind of have two significant transformations, which sort of bleed into each other.
Hmm.
You got the transformation of Don Corleone turning into a man who's not quite capable of leading the mob against this
Well,
more vicious world.
he basically deteriorates,
He
dying.
deteriorates.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
he's
deteriorates.
dying.
He literally
Yeah,
dies. He
right,
doesn't
right.
have the emotional capability to deal with this kind of violence, and he
Right.
literally dies.
Yeah,
And
right.
then it's about Michael Corleone,
Yeah.
who becomes the Godfather. It's the switching
And
of the places.
it's also about the changing of how the family,
Yeah,
the actual crime organization is changing with the changing of Michael being the leader now.
yeah.
And so that's kind of what is so great about part two. And something that I love about part two is that that club is sprawling. It's many different time periods, many different locations, and it's crazy. But uh, yeah, so that's kind of like, yeah, you're right. It's like that's really what it
And
is
I think it's because of how strong those character transformations are that you can just feel
yeah,
your way through it. You don't
yeah,
need to necessarily know what's happening literally at
yeah,
every moment. You can just feel it because the
exactly.
characters bring that to
And
it.
like Coppola has said, like he wasn't in the mob, he doesn't have a mob
Yeah.
family, and he said, how he made this movie is he took his experience of being an Italian American family, and he took that experience and basically made this movie. Himself wasn't he didn't really care about that stuff.
Yeah.
He cared about the family drama of the film, of Sonny and like all the siblings, like how they're trying to deal with their father deteriorating and Michael being the new, Don and them dealing with their wives and their relationship. We haven't even mentioned that this film spans years. It spans, over the course of a few years.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of gives this film this like insanely epic quality to it. And yeah, there's three films, so this is one of the most epic, you know, trilogies ever made in terms of like a character arc and watching one character go from one place to another, and Michael, and seeing that transformation and learning more about his family history and part two is more about kind of generational trauma and kind of more about like what he has to the actual burden of being a Corleone,
Yeah.
which this film kind of deals with, but the second part is just like way more into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like I also like I kind of want to mention some scenes that are
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
Let's go through it.
fucking awesome. So I think I'll just start with my favorite scene in this movie, which yeah, everybody goes from moving off to like that opening scene. It's great, and like I love, what that, obviously the line "I'm gonna leave an offering to refuse," incredible, line from this movie, super iconic. And what I love about that line is it's not just this. A lot of iconic lines in movies are like they say it once, and it's like almost in a super pivotal moment, like we're gonna need a bigger boat, or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. Which is great. It's incredible line. But what's cool about like that line kind of being the mantra of this movie is it it's not just a cool line, I'm going to leave an offer you can't refuse. It's actually thematically relevant to the rest of the film. It's
Yeah.
said many times, and when Michael says it, he says it towards the end of the film. He says it to, I believe, the casino owner when they're buying their Vegas. He's like, "Look, I'm going to leave an offer you can't refuse." And so it's this idea of you know, generations, passing down generations, but it's also this idea of um, this confidence, that the Corleones like uh, carry themselves with, and like you hear some of the stories, especially that opening 20 minutes about all the things that, Vito did for all these different families, and he's the godfather of certain kids, and Michael is the
Yeah.
godfather of um, I forget all the names are crazy, but I can't remember the name of who he's the godfather of.
Yeah. It's
But
his sister's
so yeah,
kid.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but it's that line is just cool. It's not just this cool line. It's thematically relevant throughout the whole film, and it's not also when you first watch the movie and you know the lines of the movie, you're expecting like this big moment, like this giant moment where it's like, I'm gonna make an offer you can't refuse. But it's
Right.
like not. It's very subtle and it's very in line with the film. It's not like this like, you know, run Forest Run, like
Yeah.
super like you might miss it, you might miss that whole aspect of that of the film,
Right.
like
Right.
which I always think is interesting.
Which is why people complain about it, because they're stupid and they miss it. Well,
Right.
they don't really complain about it. Most people think this film's genius, but I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about that one guy who was
Oh,
like
sure. Yeah.
criticizing the cinematography. He's like, it's like, I don't get why this line is so cool. It doesn't have like, I mean, I'm
Oh,
thinking
I
about
mean,
that
yeah.
because like that understated quality about how sort of cerebral and important that line is. Like when I watched that
Yes.
the first time, it was so hyped up for me that it fell flat
Right.
because I was
Right.
like, I don't get why
Right.
that's so cool. When I
Right.
watched it this time, what you were talking about hit me like in
Right.
tenfold.
Exactly.
It's like
Right.
a brutal experience because you're like, I'm not connecting with it for the spectacle of it.
Right.
It's for the emotional relevance of it
Exactly.
to
Right.
the story. And you're
Right.
right. It's so significant in more ways than just being like a really cool line, which
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, it's defining of his character,
Yeah.
like it's also like something that he would, Vito would say, and he it's part of his performance where he has this common quality about him and this like um what I love about Vito is like he has this he's scary but he's so methodical in the way that
Yeah.
he talks and the way that he speaks. Marlon Brando, man, he's just you hear stories about Marlon Brando, like this guy was insane, but he was a genius. Like you hear things about him, you're like, oh my god, man. Um, but I do want to mention, I was going to say, my favorite scene of this movie is when Michael and his brother and Sonny and Robert Wall, they plan on him uh killing the other I think it's the other family, right? One
It's
of the
the he's shooting, he's killing the guy who's leading
who
the
right.
narcotics stuff, and
Yes,
the
yes.
police
Because
chief
they're good, yeah, they
who's
want to get
corrupt.
the drugs and yeah, that's another cool part about this movie too, is that like that's also understated, the fact that they're getting into narcotics. And there's also a cool period piece aspect to this film too, because it's set in
Yeah,
the
right.
50s and like that's what's cool about this movie is like you all that's in the background and it's all there. It's all like period accurate and it's all like, like accurate to like the time, but it's not really focused on that, which is really awesome. Um, but it's just that scene where he
Yeah,
goes to the
it's so
restaurant. It
incredible.
is it is so, it is just so tension filled, and it's like there are so many amazing fucking moments in it. Like I love the other guy who's with him who doesn't speak Italian, and
Yeah.
he's just there, and he's just like eating, and he's like, "What's going on? Like, what's up? Like, what do y'all do?" Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when I don't know if it was something about like Blu-ray or whatever, but when they're speaking Italian to each other, there's no subtitles, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering if
I
that was
thought that
supposed to
that
be the
was.
case.
I mean, I loved that when I was watching it. I didn't really think about if it was not right or whatever. It might not be. So I don't know. Someone tell
I
me.
didn't
Was
get
I supposed to? Because
I
I
didn't
was
get
watching it with
subtitles.
subtitles, so I don't know if it was like canceling out or something. Like I
I
don't
think
know,
since you had this experience
but
and
I
I
had
had
it
this
on Blu-ray,
experience,
so I doubt that that was the. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think it's intentional. I'm pretty
yeah.
sure it's intentional.
But that's what I said. I was watching it thinking it was intentional, and I still thought it was brilliant. It wasn't,
Yeah.
because I thought it was so interesting because the character. I think a lot of the time, like when they're speaking Italian, sometimes the subtitles come up, I think, and then sometimes they don't. And I thought that was a really interesting decision to like not have subtitles there. One, it builds the tension because, like, unless you speak Italian, which I think most people don't, who are watching this in America, and well, I mean, I don't know, you're Italian there, you speak Italian, you might understand what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
I think it works on both levels though, because you hear what they're saying, it's still, I would assume it's still pretty tension filled scene, but if you don't, it's kind of more because you're almost like you don't really know what they're saying, but it's all through Pacino and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's their
Yeah. Yeah,
acting
dude.
of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but it's also I always see it as I'm kind of watching it through the like that we're kind of the spectator of these two guys, like we're kind of like his bodyguard or whatever. We're kind of
Yeah.
like him. He doesn't understand what's being said. That's why they're going back from English to Italian, and just that moment when he's like, "I'm gonna go to the bathroom," and there's that just amazing transformation. You see the transformation happen with Michael in that moment because you know how nervous he is and how like he's going to kill his first person,
Yeah.
and so he was in the army, right? And he's a Marine,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but he's going to kill somebody, just for the first time, really out cold, and that shot is so fucking good when he's in the bathroom and he gets the gun and there's this shot where the camera is like above this, like looking over the stall, and you see this moment of Michael just standing by the door, and there's just this moment with him. There's like a beat, and you just sit with him and this decision. He goes out and just does it, blasts those
Blows
guys
them
away,
away.
and the
Yeah.
super still to this day um violent and disturbing scene. That's kind of like what I love about this movie too, is like it doesn't uh not saying that movies that do this are bad, but this movie is not telling you like we're always with the mom. We're always with Michael, we're always with Dina, we always in some movie, there's people in that restaurant. There's a lot of people in that restaurant. If I remember correctly, it never cuts to somebody's reaction, a waitress. It never cuts to any of them in the restaurant, which I find to be really powerful and like really interesting because it's so not focused with the world around them because they don't
Yeah.
care about the world around them. Like all they care about is their job, what they're doing, and their family. And like, they don't why would the movie care about what's happening around them if the characters don't care what's happening around them?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
guy just killed two people in a restaurant, cold blooded, didn't give a fuck. He killed these two people and just left. Like,
Yeah.
and that was the plan. Like, it was like they don't give a shit, you know, and because they're powerful. That's so it's like
That's
really
a
interesting in that way.
that's a really good moment to sort of bring up how good the editing is of this film. I think it is a
Dude,
crime how
God,
bad
man.
editing has gotten in
Yeah.
modern movies.
Oh my
Editing
God.
sucks dick now. Like it's
So
so
bad.
rare to get
Because people
really
think
good
they're
editing.
like, go fast. People are gonna be bored. No, they're
Exactly.
not. Like, dude, just like that moment I just described to you with like sitting with Michael in that decision, way more powerful than to like cut like close up to him, cut to the cut to the gun in his hand. To decide it, it's way more powerful
Just sit with
to
him. Just
sit with
sit with
him
him.
because it's yeah. I don't think I so agree with you. Like that, the storytelling of this movie is yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
excellent. It's so amazing, and the editing is part of that. The way that you know, it's just structured is just it's perfect storytelling. It's just so classical, and yes, there are ways that you can tell stories that are different, but this is just the way. It's just
Yeah.
perfect the way that he told the story. Not saying that there's no right or wrong way to tell a story. It depends on the story that you're telling.
Yeah.
And this story, the way that he edited it, the way that he shot it, was perfect. He just
Yeah.
told the
That's
story perfectly. Everything came across the tragedy of this film, the the like almost the cathartic nature of the ending of the like of him finally embracing who he is, and and the tragedy of it of losing his girlfriend, and not all the things they all translate, and it's not explained to you. It's not like there's not a
yeah.
guy who's sitting behind the chair going, okay, so here's what just happened. Here's the story. It's just like, no, like it's just cinematic storytelling at its finest. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Telling
I
you.
I do, yeah. You're so
God,
on the
it's so
nose.
good, man.
I think the scene that I keep replaying in my head and I keep thinking over and over again. I really I it sounds corny, but I really think this whole movie is my favorite scene because all of them are fantastic. But
I
the
know, I kept
scene,
thinking that watching this every scene I'm like, Jesus, like every scene is
yeah,
just
right.
so good.
It's
They
so
all have
crazy.
like when a great movie works, especially like a I would call this maybe like a Hollywood film, like a blockbuster Hollywood
Yeah.
film. Like every scene has like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they
Yeah,
all
yeah.
have like this awesome rhythm to it. And like when you are watching a great movie, you feel that at the end of every scene. You're like, damn, that was awesome. Like that was, it has this rhythm, and the film like it has like so many like big scenes, and there's great transition scenes that get you to the next scene, and it's just it's incredible. It's like very hard to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're so on the
To
nose
make
about
every moment interesting and like worth
for
watching.
3 hours. For
Three
three
hours. This
hours.
does
Yeah.
not feel like 3 hours at all. This
No,
feels
no, it
like
does
an
not.
hour. Like it's every scene is important. Every character is important to the story. I mean, we didn't mention the Sunny's whole arc, which is fucking
Phenomenal.
phenomenal,
Phenomenal.
disturbing, but phenomenal. It's very sad. Uh,
Yeah.
and we didn't talk about the tragedy and some of the things like Michael's girlfriend when he was hiding out in Italy getting blown up by that car and just amazing scene, incredible moment. I wish it maybe would have stayed a little bit on the car, because it was so crazy, and it just kind of happens, and then it like fades out. I'm like,
Well,
she's like,
yeah.
oh shit, we need to relax there for a second. But yeah, I mean, like, it's just there's so many crazy things that happen in this movie.
Yeah, yeah. But
And
I
they
think
all
that,
work.
but I think the one that has stood out the most to me after watching it this time was, we already brought it up, but it's the scene where Michael is saving Vito Corleone from those guys doing a hit on him.
Oh, I love it.
And that scene of
And the
him
cops.
moving,
And yeah.
yeah, the scene of him moving his dad out of that hospital into a different room. There's so many stages of that scene that are so genius. The first genius moment to me is when he's talking to the nurse, and that's when we
Yeah.
start to see that's like Michael's capable, and you
Yes.
start to believe you, because
Right.
up until that point the whole family is struggling with Vito
Yeah.
being incapacitated, because
Right.
Sonny is not capable of leading. He's too crazy, and Duvall's
Yeah.
not a leader type. So,
No,
but
lose the
even though
lawyer.
he's
He's not part of the
intelligent,
family.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what that was the moment where you see it's like, oh shit, Michael's the one. He's the
Yeah.
one who can do this. It was
Right.
that when that scene, and
Right.
then that awesome sort of so creative and cool to have him sort of like intimidate those guys with just the
Oh
flower person there,
God.
which reminds me of
Yeah.
Breaking Bad, like why
Yeah.
his character is so cool. He's the puffer fish, right? It's the
Yeah.
puffer fish routine about being scarier than you actually are, but actually kind of makes you that scary when you think about it, that
Yeah.
you can be scary, intimidate these big mobsters with nothing but like yourself and like a bread guy. That's all you need to scare
Right.
off the world.
Yeah.
And so that scene just sort of encapsulates
Yeah.
so much about Michael's character.
Well,
It's
also,
this
like, I
crazy
love
transition
the
scene.
cap of that too, where like his relationship with the cops too, and like
Yeah.
how he. I just love like you also get like it's explained like how the long boss pays a lot of these guys off
Right.
and things like that. Like that's something that has always interested me about the mob and the mafia and things like that. That makes it so scary and fucking awesome, because they own the city. Like the idea that like they're able to, with their money and their power and their scare tactics and their violence, and they're able to really run the whole city. They control the law enforcement and like all the. There's this disturbing moment where two police officers kill a couple people. They turn on them and kill like, oh, no. I changed like I changed my favorite scene. I changed it. I can't believe I didn't mention this. But my favorite moment, and something that is kind of the transitional moment, like truly like, because that you're right. That is a moment where you're like, oh wow, he is capable. The baptism scene. The baptism
One of
is
the most incredible scenes in cinematic history, for
holy
sure.
mother of
No
God.
doubt.
Like it is that movie, that scene encapsulates this movie to me. Because um there is a really amazing baptism scene in part two that is maybe better. But this one, there is so much weight behind what is happening in that scene. It's so weighty and powerful that the fucking movie can end like there. You're
Yeah.
like, that was crazy. Like,
Yeah.
but instead it goes for another hour. And thank God it does. But that is so powerful because the correlation of him seeing his godson being baptized, and this hit going on that he orchestrated in the background. The cops, that he's paid off to kill these guys, and all these things that are happening, and going back to the back. I mean, it's incredible storytelling. That's cinema. That's what you can do with cinema. Is
Yeah.
that you can tell stories that invoke so much with images and just and things like that. And it's just like that's that's why Coppola is one of the greats. Yes, some of the movies that he made in the 90s are whack. But the guy is always experimenting. That was something that I love about Coppola. Is you see some of these 80s things like Rumblefish, which I absolutely love, but he wasn't always experimenting. Even like to his in the movies that he was making in the 2010s that were like Twixt. It's like a weird vampire movie starring Val Kilmer that apparently is horrible. But at least he was doing something different. He always was experimenting and like, he's one of the greatest filmmakers. He understands cinema on a level that not there's a handful of people in the world do, and
Yeah.
Coppola is one of them, and so that is just that scene is so indicative of that to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those, man, that baptism scene is just, it's just one of those things that you just need a long time to process how genius it is, but it's so astonishing that it works so immediately, because
Yes,
you
yeah,
watch it and you're like, I get it. That's
yes,
great. But then you unpack
exactly.
it and it's just like, what the fuck? That's
Yeah, right,
crazy. That's so
right,
insane.
right.
Because it's not just good editing or like
Yeah,
fast paced or whatever, or just like a cool scene.
yeah,
It's like the imagery and the moment
right,
and the tone
right.
and the timing
And
on
the
top of all of
history,
that, and the
that's
history
going on.
and
Yeah,
the music, all of that stuff.
right.
It's just like,
Oh, the score, so
oh,
iconic. It's so good. The
yeah,
score is like one of the reasons I think this film feels so epic. The
yeah,
music is so unique and like operatic and just awesome.
yeah. The music lends. I think, again, using Marvel as I feel like it's kind of a lazy thing to just keep criticizing Marvel, but it's really easy to use and it exemplifies the
Why? That's the
example so
only
well.
movies that come out in theaters.
That's a very
So
good point. It's all we have.
there's
But
48 of them.
yeah,
It's
but
almost ruining all of cinema. So I don't think so.
but Marvel, the plague with Marvel is this generic music,
Oh
which
my
just
god.
is
I
just
think
like
we talked
this.
about that recently somewhere.
Yeah, and it's so disappointing because yeah, it goes in there and it's like you put a sad song for a sad moment and triumphant songs, but it's like that's what it is. All it is like one word emotions.
That's
But
why,
like
dude, I just have this hilarious thought about the music. Um, one of the best Marvel movies, maybe the best Marvel movie in the world, think about it, Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah,
The soundtrack, dude, it's incredible. It's so good. Dude, that shit has sold like hotcakes. I remember that movie came out, vinyl, like, I mean, just the soundtrack with like normal, like good ass 70s songs, like Ain't No Mountain High Enough, like all these
yeah,
things
yeah.
sold like hotcakes. Marvel, what are you doing? Like,
I
you
know.
understand the music and the power of the music. And yes, I understand it's part of the movie, it's Peter's mixtape or whatever, but like, you get it. Like, I mean, just make good music. Like,
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
just
I
do
mean
that. I don't care. You don't
that's a
have to
great
have
that
score music. Just try to do shit like that. You have all the money in the world. You just do it. You
yeah,
know?
just buy songs that are relevant. I would
Hell,
take that.
make more mixtapes and soundtracks and make more money.
Yeah, I mean
People will buy it. You know?
that's what people like Quentin Tarantino really pioneered, is just
Exactly.
using
Right.
those things for using
And
popular
PTA, Paul
songs.
Thomas Anderson as well.
Yeah, right. It's a genius way to do music, and it's much better than just this literal stock music that comes in.
Yeah, it's
And
literally, and it was crazy. It's like they hire these people like Michael Giacchino, like these geniuses, hugs or like to make these scores. Alan Silvestri, to make these scores, and it's like they phone it in. They don't fucking care. They're like,
yeah,
all right, here's a theme. All right, I have this theme, this failed theme that I had for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'll just put that in here. Like that's what it feels like.
I
It doesn't
know.
feel good.
It's like it's in this modern dark age with like scores and posters, or just something that sort of accompany
Yeah.
movies out of necessity. It's
But
like,
the score is like way more important because like
yeah,
the posters is marketing, movie, whatever. But the score is like, dude, like back in the 70s and things like that. And maybe part of why we love the music in this movie, in The Godfather, because there are so many, scores that have tried to replicate The Godfather with the orchestration, and there
Mm-hmm.
is a specific tone that the orchestra has in this score that I think if you try to do it, it's just like The Godfather. It's just this Italian kind of operatic score that it has to it that was so unique for the time. But there's also something too. Movies only had sound for like 40 years, up until that point. And like now, we've had sound in cinema for 80 years. And so it might be kind of hard to even come up with unique scores nowadays. It might just be hard to, so much has been done and so
Yeah.
much like, uh, I don't know. I
I
think that
I I I
something
think
just has to happen where,
I think it's a good argument to bring that up, but I don't think it's the reason because I think there's an infinite amount of things. There's no way you can run out of musical ideas. It's like the
right.
idea that you can't run out of making good
Well, obviously
songs.
not. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think the problem is that people are just doing the same things because of marketing themes. So in a
Mm-hmm.
way, it's true because they just found things that work and are just replicating that instead of trying to do what the film needs,
Right.
trying to be that piece. Because the thing with the music, which is so present in The Godfather, is that the music does so much work in creating the emotion of the scene, the
Yeah.
emotion of it. So
Right.
that feeling, like when we were talking about earlier, I think a big reason of why you can feel your way through the film is because of how supportive the music is of the performances, the editing, all of that
Right.
stuff. The music is a huge
Oh
important
yeah.
guide to
It
that.
kind of
It's
guides you. Right.
yeah.
Right.
And without that, and with music is also crazy because I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this too. When we were in film school, a lot of times we would have this footage or whatever, and it'd be kind of like, this is awful. This is
Yeah.
truly awful. And you throw
Right.
music on it, and it's like, this is dope
Well, I
now.
was
This
like,
is
I
just
remember
cool.
like I made this like one of my favorite things I made in film school was like that little cowboy thing that I did. Well, I don't know what it was, outlaw thing, but
Yeah.
it was like where you were in it. I remember shooting it, and like we edited it and it looked fine, but when I put music to it, it just added this whole other element to it. I don't
Yeah.
know if you remember that, but it
I
added
know.
like
I
this
totally
whole
remember that.
other thing to it,
100%.
and like it just made it like way better, Um, so
Yeah,
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 absolutely,
and I think that's a again that's what makes The Godfather great is that it doesn't lean on the good qualities of the
yeah,
film and have like mediocre qualities territory. All of it is fantastic, all of
yeah,
it.
right,
The
right,
screenplay, editing,
yeah,
cinematography, acting,
yeah.
music, sound design, all of it is like phenomenal work. Is
And
phenomenal
I
work.
also think that this film does something cool with like sound and music in terms of like when silence is needed.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna bring up there's this amazing moment in the Godfather 3 that is super powerful and it deals with sound. But this film, another one of my favorite moments is when Nino dies. I That scene is so kind of funny, but it's also like really sad. I mean, it's super disturbing and sad. But when he dies, there's no music. It's completely silent, and
Mhm.
it's way more powerful that way. Here, hearing his grandson like go up to him and poke him, and
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
silence, just hearing, is way more powerful than if there was like, like some like fucking sad music,
Yeah.
um, so like that's just one moment that I think like
That's a great example.
choosing not to play music is the right decision,
Yeah. 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 And that's something too is a thing. The choice to not make music is a really necessary choice on a lot of times, which I think that's another example why a lot of Marvel movies fail is just this it's oversaturated with just what the sound should be at every
Yeah,
point, instead of just making some kind of creative decision like that. It's like
right.
I'm going to take this
And
out.
even like I wouldn't even say the Marvel movies. I think like just movies in general, like the scores, like I can't remember like there being a score that has really given me a big old boner, The last
Yeah.
one. The Lighthouse is really good.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one for
That
me,
one's like
actually.
really. That one's kind of unconventional though. You know,
Yeah.
like it's. I'm trying to think of like a more conventional one. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah, you mean
Lighthouse is
like
like not really. It's more of like atmosphere music, and it's more of like um almost like part of the sound design of the movie, if that makes any sense.
yeah, no, it does. It's
And
a
there's
good
not a lot of
description.
it in that film either.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think of the opening. It's really the opening few moments and like the final is like really going on the music, but
Yeah, but you mean more along the lines
I'll look
of
Back to the
films,
Future or like
yeah, with
a Superman,
themes and
right?
orchestra and stuff like
Mad Max
that.
Fury Road has fucking awesome music. It has like this
Right.
amazing tribal drums and just electric guitars, bombastic, you know.
Yeah.
Really,
Uh
like I can think of the music of that, you know. Like I can
yeah.
think of the music and Mad Max Fury Road. So,
The two movies I can think of which aren't super recent are by the same uh guy who made the score is It Follows and Under the Silver Lake. Like I
yeah,
love the scores for those personally.
yeah.
That
The
those are
Follows is really good.
yeah. So those are those but those are the two recent ones that come to mind, but it's always been that's been something I've always tried to keep track of is when music really grabs me because it's one of those things that is rare for me. And I thought
Yeah.
for a long time I just didn't like soundtrack music
Oh,
that much, which is
yeah.
so not true. And it's just that I just
No.
it's just kind of mediocre a lot of it.
Um, Swiss Army Man. That's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
weird one, but that one has this like. I mean, that's kind of like that one to me. Like, has this amazing quality about it where it's almost like a like the film's so fucking awesome and weird, but there's part of it that is a musical, you know? And so
Yeah.
the music kind of accompanies that. Like there's a whole thing where they sing out a montage, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and things like that. Like I love the music in that. Bum bum bum. Like I could actually like think about the melody and kind of the because that's kind of a cheat code, I guess, because that melody kind of is in the narrative of the movie and runs through the film, you know? So it's
Yeah.
kind of odd. But that's a cool movie that uses music in a really cool way. I don't know. It's just it's odd, you know?
This would be a good discussion to have as like its whole own podcast. It's like
Yeah,
discussion of specifically music and film because it's really had a transformation and maybe it's just like a disappointment, you know, like when you're in your own generation. I feel like maybe sometimes it's kind of normal to feel like, oh, we're in like the boringest part of
right.
history, but I really do feel like we're kind of in a dark age with soundtracks. And so like
Yeah,
when I watched The Godfather, I was really kind of feeling that again. It's just like, man, if they just you could do so much amazing
yeah.
shit with that.
And there's
It's
times, you know, where like I remember like loving like the Warfare Play of the Apes really. I remember like the last time I saw that, I was like, wow, I really like the music of that. And like, I don't know, maybe it's just because it just hit me in the way that if I listen to it, it's probably just normal. But in the movie, it's different. You know, you know, that's something about movie music and soundtrack music that's like kind of different than like traditional music. Is like just listening to it is like rarely is interesting. You know, like it's really like seeing it, you know, and like what it's accompanying
yeah,
is
I have
really
a bit
the
of I think that's true, but I've had a different experience with as I've listened to more soundtrack music because my experience with it is that I really
oh,
like
Uncut Gems.
oh yeah, the music
That's the
is
best
great
score
on
in the
that.
last few years.
Yeah, I
Uncut
like that
Gems
score
is
a lot.
awesome.
Oh my
It's
god.
unique. It's different. It's actually exactly what I'm talking about. It's this classical feeling to it. It actually has music throughout it. It has themes. Yes, Uncut Gems is the best score that
That's
I've heard in a
excellent.
long
Yeah,
time.
that's a really
Same with Good
excellent
Time.
one.
Good Time is fucking awesome too.
Yeah, same guy. Both
Yeah, one of Six Point Never.
so good, so
Yeah,
fucking good. But my feeling with music is kind of with sound and music is that I find that the music that hits me in film is not music that if I just heard on its own it would hit me, but after I see it on that film, when I listen to it again, I it's like I
sure,
unlock that potential of that music.
sure.
And I think Bjork had this a really amazing quote when she talks about music videos, where
Yeah.
she was saying, I think this is probably very famous, but she was saying that music videos are great because the eyes are more mature than the ears. So if you put visuals to it, it gives people sort of a way to understand
Yeah.
things in a way. I mean, I feel pretty good about that. I mean, I think we did a really good discussion about kind of breaking down why this film
I
was
think so.
significant. That's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about why this film's significant, why it was significant, why it still is significant, and what we like so much about it. And
Yeah.
I think we covered all those points.
Listen, what else do I want to say? Watch this movie.
Yeah,
If
man.
you haven't seen it, fucking watch it. I know, and I'm talking to a lot of my fucking friends out there who think that they like the movies. Watch The Godfather, man. Like it really is. Just watch it once in your life. I'm not saying that you're gonna love it, or I'm not saying that you're gonna like, it's gonna become your favorite thing. You gotta see it. You just
Yeah.
gotta see it. It's just such a building block of the films that we love and watch today, that it's just, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice to not watch this movie at least once in your life, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I just think that old movies are cool. Classic movies are fucking cool, you know? And like this movie is so cool. So like it's such a it's a story that like this is one of those things that I wouldn't actually say bullshit if you were like, I like The Sopranos, but I don't like The Godfather. I would say that's bullshit. There's no way, there's no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Unless you watch The Sopranos first, maybe that's an argument. And you're like, have this weird relationship with The Godfather where you're like, oh, this is just The Sopranos? Like, okay. But, like, I have a hard time believing, like, why you wouldn't like this. It's really fantastic. And you don't have to be into mob movies. You don't have to be into, like I was describing earlier, like, this film really isn't focused on the inner workings of the mob. Like, it's focused on the family and this, like you can look at this as like a family business movie.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Vito's the lead baker, and Michael is they own a bakery. Just watch it like that. They own a
Yeah.
bakery. That's like it's really the story is just so universal in that way that it's just so classic, so great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where when I think about The Godfather and how relevant it still is, and we've talked about the fact that at some point it's probably is going to be inevitable that The Godfather will feel less relevant. Time
Yeah, sure.
will wear it away. But
I don't
it's so hard for me to comprehend that happening, you know?
I
It's so
I
difficult for me
don't
to
know
think
if
that.
that will happen. I
It's just
really don't because um this film it's already timeless in a weird way. We're talking about it's 50 years old. And we're doing 50-year anniversary Blu-ray sets coming out right now and restorations of the movie still being talked about. And I think that's because this film isn't focused on first of all, it's already set in the 50s. So it's already like a period piece that's like, not tied to a time in the 70s. And yeah, sure, it might feel a little different because movies are made differently, but it still works. It's still powerful. I think the story will still always be powerful and always be relevant because it is the core of that family. And that will
yeah.
always stand the test of time.
Yeah, and
Um,
I just think that movies will just have to go somewhere incredible for The Godfather to feel dated.
so
And
yeah,
I would
it's gotta be like,
the
you know,
day that The Godfather feels dated is like the day that
yeah,
is just like this is the best day in movie
yeah,
history
right,
because we have the most phenomenal movies in the world coming
yeah,
out right now. Was when the day that
yeah.
The Godfather feels
And I
dated.
guess it will come out. I mean, it will be a time, but like for me, it's hard to tell because I like old movies, and I like not just because I think, like I was explaining, they're some of the greatest movies of all time, older films, and because so many different elements. But uh, I also love that movies are like time machines. The idea that you could just the idea of this movie, it's made in the 70s, it's recreating a time in the 50s. Watching this in 2022, it's kind of mind blowing. It's kind of crazy. Like you're viewing this lens of a completely different time, which is very cool and just interesting because it's not the time that I'm living in, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like modern movies are cool. Everything Everywhere and All at Once is a fucking incredible movie. It's set in 2022. Like I don't care. Like, you know, but there's just something about like peering into this other, you know, universe almost of like older things. And it's like that's like so that's like true escapism to me, you know, is watching older things because it's not only just an escapism of watching a movie, but it's the escapism of watching something that is made 50 years ago, you know, like before your fucking time. So it's like this amazing experience. And if you really want to delve into the history of the making of it, there's so many awesome stories about the Godfather. There's so many amazing just anecdotes about the making of the movie. It's just so deep and rich. That's why, like, as cinephiles, I love old things because there's so much to like look up and chew on and have fun with. Modern movies are like they come in like we're in the history of it. You know, I believe Uncut Gems is a classic, but we're still in the idea that that movie's still relevant. People are still kind of
It's
talking
still
about it.
being
So
gestated. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like not as interesting as like what happened when Eraserhead came out. What were people doing when Eraserhead came out? Oh, it was like a midnight movie. It was like considered one of the first midnight films. You know, it's like it's a cool history behind there. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah. And
um,
and it's just so profound on more than just like a fun film experience kind of
yeah,
level because of the way that it connects to culture and stuff. And
exactly.
it's like it's almost to me like watching it, it's almost like I get to experience some kind of sacred object, which to me it's like that because
Yeah,
I am a
absolutely,
cinephile.
man.
But
Yeah,
it's like you watch that and for me when I think about that, it's like this movie's gonna outlive me, you know, like of course it
yeah,
will because
right,
it will exist physically,
right.
but it's like this movie will be remembered longer than me the person
I
will
mean,
be.
that's the
That's
idea
crazy.
of like the Library of Congress, you know, having
Yeah,
these reels of film and these things stored away because they will last forever. You know, the Godfather is in the Library of Congress. You know, it is something that we want to preserve forever. You know, because it's a work of art. It's like it's something that was culturally significant. You know, and that's it's really important. It is watching a relic. You know, it is
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's like this old thing. You know that is still being enjoyed to this day and
yeah.
still helping people through their family dramas to
Yeah,
this
yeah,
day. You
yeah.
know,
And
so
I think it's 100% like it's obvious it's one of the best films of all time,
yeah,
I
it's
think.
incredible. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's really
Godfather
amazing.
2 is also really damn good. So this guy, Coppola, is the shit. He's also made some really weird films. If you want to get into Coppola, he's a really cool filmmaker to get into. He's made some really weird things. And some of the most classic things ever. Maybe one day we'll do Apocalypse Now, because Apocalypse Now is also so good.
Which
So amazing.
I have never seen. I can't
Yeah, you gotta
believe it. I
watch
have
that.
never seen Apocalypse. I haven't seen Apocalypse Now or Godfather Part 2. So I have so much adventure ahead of me and it's very
Yeah.
exciting.
Apocalypse Now is like, oh, I like that world of the Godfather. I don't know.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's
I
so
love it.
crazy.
All right. Anyway, this was a wild podcast. I don't know what we talked about. We got mad at each other for a second.
You got mad at me. I was
I got
fine.
mad at you. Yeah. But I think we covered the basis. I think we made this is a classic Thicc Butter podcast.
That's a classic. This is a classic Thicc and Butter podcast.
Oh man. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We got this far. We love you. I don't know what the next probably review for some recent movie. We're about to get inundated with
Really
a shit ton of fucking things
good shit. Good shit.
coming
Good
out.
shit.
So we're gonna do a lot of reviews, I think, this year for newer things. Which I'm very excited about. So, all right, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.